Broncos country, what is up? I'm the Kodiak, and today I'm here to talk about the fact that Broncos coaches, executives are actually getting hired, which is remarkable to think about because there was a long time ago where nobody within our staff was a rising star or desired by any team in the NFL. So I'm going to talk about that in this video, but I just want to say a couple things. First of all, leave a like if you enjoy, subscribe if you're not already. You can always wait until the end. Hopefully I'll have earned it. My comment question of the day, so obviously leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. What is your favorite piece of Broncos memorabilia? I'll start with this one. So my dad and my uncle actually own a Eli Manning and Peyton Manning signed football. I know that that's not necessarily Broncos exclusive, but that is one of my favorite pieces of Broncos memorabilia, and it's hanging up in their office. So that's pretty cool. Follow me on Twitter if you like what I have to say on here at Kodiak Broncos. Let's dive right into it. So beginning with our AGM, who is now the GM of the New York Jets, Darren Mougey. So the way I found out who this guy was I was watching Behind the Broncos 3 years ago, and I think he was either talking about Surtain or Javante, but Darren Mougey had done a little breakdown, a mini breakdown, and I thought it was pretty cool. And yeah, overall, this guy was a rising star within NFL draft circles. I think it's pretty cool that the first time he interviewed for a GM position, he actually ended up getting the job because there's guys that never get this opportunity, and he must have hit it out of the park. So congrats to you, Darren Mougey. And one thing I must say is that the Broncos and Jets pipeline remains alive and well. So the Jets went from, castrating our head coach a year and a half ago to hiring a head coach from his tree and hiring an assistant GM from within his own building. Okay, I'm kind of kidding when it comes to that, but the Broncos, the Jets pipeline has always, or not always, but the past 2 years has been very alive and well. John Franklin Myers, Zach Wilson, there's some other things. Jerry Jeudy was actually supposed to go to the Jets as well. So there's been a lot of things that indicate that Joe Douglas and George Payton had a very strong relationship. Now, Joe Douglas ended up getting fired, but it seemed like the Broncos and Jets had a very strong relationship in that regard. Now, the Jets are easily my second favorite team once Rodgers leaves. They've always been. Rodgers is on my short list of guys who I just absolutely can't stand, never been able to. And once he came to the Jets, I was like, all right, I'm not cheering for this team anymore. But once they get rid of Rodgers, this team is going to be likable again, especially now that they have our GM and they have our special teams coordinator. So he actually began his time with the Broncos as a scouting intern in 2012, and he rose up to being an NFL GM in only 13 years. I feel like that's got to be pretty quick for, rising within NFL circles. I actually know a dude personally who got hired to be a scouting assistant with the Carolina Panthers, so hopefully he can follow the same trajectory. But regardless, it's unknown how much impact he actually had on the Broncos. Like when you hire an AGM from a different team, you don't know how much impact they actually had on those teams' draft classes, on the free agent signings, on the player development, or anything like that. But overall, I feel like this is a pretty good hire for the Jets because even though the Russ trade happened, I feel like the Broncos front office has been very, very smart the past 3-4 years. So he got to learn under George Payton, and I just hope that he can do a lot of good with the new position that he's in. I have a really big concern, though. My only concern with Darren Mougey is, who do you answer to? Because in that Athletic article that came out by Diana Rossini, Joe Douglas basically told The Athletic that he had to answer to teenagers, and teenagers were the ones actually running the show. And I'm just concerned about what the job entails. I'm concerned about, what's going to happen with when he becomes the GM of the Jets, how much free will and how much team control he'll actually have. Because it would suck to get this once-in-a-lifetime chance of being an NFL GM and for you to be just absolutely looked at under a microscope by teenagers. Like, that would suck. And I hope that's not the case there, but I think they will turn it around. All right, so the day is actually Thursday afternoon, and I was about to upload this tomorrow. This video is complete, so I guess I'm retroactively making this, but David Shaw was just hired 2 minutes ago to be the pass game coordinator of the Detroit Lions. And I guess I should have seen this coming because when you have Sean Payton and Dan Campbell, filling out their trees across the NFL, you are going to get a lot of connections throughout the league. And basically, I guess David Shaw was also a Dan Campbell guy. So, yeah, Shaw was the head coach at Stanford from 2011 to 2022, and another guy who was around the NFL and college football. He started in the 90s as a positional coach with the Eagles and Raiders, And then he was around the NFL for a while, mainly coaching tight ends and wide receivers. And then in 2011, he got hired to be the head coach of Stanford. And he was there for 11 years. So I don't really know how much of an impact he had with like their recruiting and everything like that. But he did coach guys like Andrew Luck, guys like Christian McCaffrey. So I guess that's a feather in his cap right there. Even though those guys would still have been successful, the fact that they were coached by Shaw, I guess teams like that ability about him because he took a senior personnel role on with the Broncos within the past year. I think in March or February last year, he got hired to be a part of our front office, and I guess he took a year off from college football in the 2023 season, and yeah. So you're getting a lot of fun treats with Goff and Amon-Ra and Jameson Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs, like we're going to see with John Morton later on in this video. This seems like a position that's pretty hard to fail in above all else. But yeah, once again, I'm retroactively making this because David Shaw just got hired to be the pass game coordinator of the Lions. So this means that we may not be done by the time you're done watching this video. We might lose more guys, but yeah. Now, Declan Doyle, our old tight ends coach, somehow ended up getting hired as the offensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears. So he was our tight ends coach this past year. I'm not going to blame him for the lack of talent or the lack of effort or the fact that our guys had brick hands in that room. I'm not going to blame him for that because ultimately that's not his fault as a tight ends coach. Like literally his job is just to make the best of what he has within the room rather than go out and get dudes. And the NFL sometimes is a fail upwards league, I must say. So even though we did have guys that weren't that good, you know, the fact that we did have some poor effort, you know, whatever, that ultimately is a semi-reflection of Declan Doyle. I'm not going to say how much because I don't know how much was on him and how much was just on the guys in that room. But even if he's bad, like, listen, he's an understudy for Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson, when he was talking about how he wants to attack the offensive and defensive coordinator spots on his coaching staff, how do I put this? Ben Johnson said he wanted to film, you know, whatever in my notes, and that guy's not going to be involved in, you know, calling plays or anything like that. But I imagine that, you know, when it comes to the weekly install, when it comes to watching tape on the other team for any given week, I imagine that Declan Doyle will have a lion's share of that responsibility with the Chicago Bears, much like Joe Lombardi and Pete Carmichael had for the Denver Broncos. Now, his dad was a strength and conditioning coach at Iowa, and that's actually where Doyle ended up getting his start as a student assistant. Now, all I got to say about that is thank God that a lot of us are not carbon copies of our fathers because, yeah, I don't know. Just look it up. Now, he was with Sean Payton and the Saints from 2018 to 2022. And then once Sean Payton came over here, he became the tight ends coach of the Broncos. Now, once again, another dude who I think rose relatively quickly because in not even a decade ago, he was at Iowa, you know, as a student assistant. And now he's the offensive coordinator for an NFL team and one who I imagine I'm expecting. Say whatever you want about the Bears. I think next year they have no excuse for being a bad offense, especially with Caleb, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, and just a bunch of other dudes who they're probably going to add during the draft. So, yeah. Declan Doyle, once again, mile high salute. Hope you do well, my man. Now, John Morton, offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions. So, if there is any coordinator spot that you would want in the NFL that opened up this past year, it is definitely like I would underline, highlight, star, circle the offensive coordinator position for the Detroit Lions. So the same logic tracks on Doyle. Like, I don't know how much he was actually involved with our offense. I imagine that it's hard to be upset with him because of how well our quarterback played, you know, despite the fact that we had so little talent. Bo Nix was maximized. I can say that. He was maximized. That's testament to everybody involved. That's a testament to Sean Payton. That's a testament to Joe Lombardi. That's a testament to Pete Carmichael. That's a testament to Davis Webb. And that is also a testament to John Morton. So this, once again, was probably one of the best offensive coordinator jobs in the NFL. And John Morton only had the offensive coordinator position on one NFL team, and it was the Jets in 2017 with Todd Bowles. Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously the Jets back then were just nothing to write home about, but they were pretty similar to us at that time as well. But he has 27 years of NFL coaching experience. He has a very long track record of, you know, bouncing around the NFL. not bouncing around, but being around the NFL. And he finally gets to run an offense for the second time. Now, once again, 2017 Jets didn't end up going very well, but for John Morton, this seems like a position that's really hard to fail in because Dan Campbell is a great offensive mind of his own. Like, yes, you could say whatever you want about Ben Johnson, but Dan Campbell, that doesn't happen. Like, the Lions do not turn into the Lions without the Lions offense doesn't turn into the Lions offense without Dan Campbell. And now, obviously, John Morton's going to have to answer to him. And I imagine that John Morton is going to call the plays just because Ben Johnson was the one that called the plays. So I think Dan Campbell does like a really hands-off approach, and I think he likes being able to manage pretty much every aspect and being that CEO type that it seems like almost like a college head coach where, they're not coordinating either offense or defensive side of the ball. I'm going to take a little sip of Pellegrino real quick. But there's just so much talent on Detroit that I can't imagine anybody having a hard time being the offensive coordinator of the Lions. Like, obviously, there's 3, 4, 5 games when you're the offensive coordinator of a team that good that are really going to determine how people view you. Like, if you score 40 points a game in a lot of your contests that are against bottom feeders in the NFC, then yeah, people are going to be like, yay. But when it comes down to it, like, are you going to be able to play against the Vikings well? Can you play against the Packers well? And if they can't, then a lot of people are going to be really, really pissed off at Morton. But once again, this is a team that also plays in a dome for at least 9 out of their 17 games a year. Yeah, because obviously you have Minnesota too. So, I feel like the weather is not really going to be a factor here either. Like, you could get a bad weather road game in Chicago. You could get a bad weather road game in Green Bay. But ultimately, once again, that's something I didn't even think of until now. Like, it just seems like it's way, way too good to be true if you are the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions. So, yeah. Now, Chris Banjo, special teams coordinator of the New York Jets. So, he kind of had an interesting arc in the NFL because he was a player from 2013 to 2022, was signed as a UDFA by Jacksonville, but Jacksonville ended up not keeping him on their 53-man roster when it was time for Banjo to, make his mark on the NFL. And he was a special team standout in the NFL from 2013 to 2022. He signed with Green Bay immediately after he was released by the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he stayed with Green Bay until 2015, and then the Saints scooped him up in 2016 until 2018, and then he went to the Cardinals from 2019 to 2022, and he was basically the special teams coordinator on the field, and then he got a spot as the Broncos assistant special teams coach in 2023, assistant to Ben Kakwika and Mike Westhoff. So yeah, I figured this was bound to happen with Aaron Glenn becoming the head coach of the Jets and Mougey becoming the GM, because obviously Banjo has connections to both of them. And it's not one that I would think about, but now that it happened, I'm just like, yeah, this just makes way too much sense. Like, I don't even know what I'm thinking about. But now opens up a question for the Broncos. So what do we do at special teams coordinator? So as of right now, it is like 1:30 a.m. on Wednesday or Thursday, January 30th. So as of right now, nothing's happened. Within the next 2 days, by the time you're watching this, maybe something happens. But regardless, I think what we're waiting for is Darren Mougey to get final confirmation from the Saints that he is not going to be their head coach, because there was a report that dropped earlier today that says Mike McCarthy might not want to coach the Saints. And if he doesn't want to, then they don't really know who else will. And I think they'd backtrack back to Mougey. But yeah. So ultimately, that's just how I feel about all of our coordinators getting poached. These are all the guys who did end up finding jobs with new NFL teams. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Maha salute. Peace.